Zimbabwe currently grapples with a substantial $18 billion debt burden, rendering it ineligible for new credit lines from multilateral lenders like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the African Development Bank. Now, in February, the government signed a $400 million loan agreement, which carried a 10.2% interest rate over a 6-year term, with the borrowing cost escalating to 12.2% in the event of default with Afreximbank. The Southern African nation is settling the loan with the proceeds of its platinum exports. However, the over-reliance on this single mineral resource and a high interest rate of 133% amidst rising inflation further puts the country on a leash, making it hard to liberate its economy. To further help us make sense of this, I have Dr. Prosper Chitambara, a development economist. Of course, he is joining us from Zimbabwe. Thank you so much for talking to us. I may need to unmute your device.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you. Now, let's look at the issues. Yeah, Zimbabwe currently grapples with about $18 billion of debt burden, rendering the country ineligible when it comes to getting credit from lenders internationally now. Of course, when you look at this issue, you also want to tie it to its economy. Now, how has this particular debt impacted its budgetary plans? How has it affected the infrastructure financing that it is hoping for and the overall economy?
Yeah, so it's been a major challenge. It has affected our economy in a whole lot of different ways. The first point, you've rightly pointed out that we can't access the international credit markets. We can't borrow concessionary. So whatever new borrowings we have to enter into, we are borrowing at market interest rates plus a premium. So that makes it even more and more expensive and unsustainable for Zimbabwe to borrow at a time, again, when we are in debt distress. We've been actually failing to pay or to service our huge external debt arrears. And of course, government, they've recently published the 2024 national budget, or announced the 2024 national budget, and government again is projecting to borrow money to finance the huge deficit for next year. So government will borrow probably about 300 million. They are saying about 300 million US dollars. And also they are going to issue treasury bills and treasury bonds locally. So local borrowings have the unintended effect of crowding out the rest of the economy from the local credit market. So there's a crowding out effect. And again, the local interest rates are on the very high side. The bank policy rate is currently set at 130%.
Okay,
which is the highest interest rate actually in the world.
Well, yes, Dr. Chitambara, we'll still get to look at the interest rates and the borrowing cost, looking at the $400 million that the government signed in February. But then we'll go on a short break, and when we return, we'll look at that and pick it up from there. On the segment of Business Edge, we have been discussing about $400 million loan that the Zimbabwean government is trying to pay back. Of course, what is owed to Afreximbank, and it has turned to its mineral resource, and that is platinum. And that's what we've been considering on the show this morning, talking to Dr. Prosper Chitambara. So, Dr. Chitambara, earlier on you said that, of course, the issue around Zimbabwe getting into default and the need to seek funds wherever it could find it to fund government and its expenditure and to refuel the economy led to the government having to visit or to lobby for loans from international creditors, as it were. Now, we're looking at $400 million loan that is to be repaid with the resource of platinum. But then some people are actually asking the question if that was a wise decision. Why is that? It's because of the interest rate on this loan, which is about 10.2%, and the borrowing cost, which escalated to about 12.2%. So when you look at what, in terms of accruals that the Zimbabwean government would have to pay back to Afreximbank, some people are saying that is that a wise decision to have taken in February because it will further plunge the country into debt, looking at the value of the Zim dollar and, of course, the size of its economy. What do you think? Doctor, you need to unmute your device, please. You've not done that.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So I think we are really in a catch-22 situation. We have limited degrees of freedom in terms of raising the required resources to finance development on the one hand. Then on the other hand, we can't borrow money cheaply. We are borrowing money at premium, at a very, very high premium. So I understand probably why government found itself in that situation. It's not a very prudent action, really. But I'm sure the options are very limited for government. And of course, we have seen,
Dr. Chitambara, if you say that the options are limited, some financial analysts say that Zimbabwe has gold, it has copper, it has platinum that it's trying to use now to pay its debt. So they are saying that why is it that the government didn't actually invest more or focus more on these natural mineral deposits to scale up operations in those areas to generate more funds to fuel government expenditure rather than plunge itself into debt and now having to use these mineral resources to now pay back its loans?
That's a very good point. That's a very good observation. We should actually be leveraging these resources that we actually have, like gold. We're one of the biggest producers, not just of platinum, of gold. We also have the fifth probably country with the greatest lithium resources. So I think obviously the best way is to try to leverage revenues from these resources. Of course, we've also noted that our mining sector in general has been affected by a lot of leakages. The smuggling, especially of gold, smuggling of diamonds. So smuggling has been very, very rampant. So I think we also need to be closing those leakages, making it difficult for people to smuggle minerals. I think we can actually do more just by leveraging our resources without necessarily borrowing. So yes, that would be probably the first best option that we have. But of course, that requires a lot of political will and commitment to be able to leverage resources using that first best option.
Okay, now
so Bloomberg, borrowing is an easy option, obviously.
Of course,
though it comes at a higher cost.
Yes, I understand. Now, let me just relay with you this particular information. Now, Bloomberg reported that the Southern African nation, that is Zimbabwe's reliance on its single platinum resource to secure borrowing highlights the challenges that the country is facing in terms of obtaining loans from international financiers or creditors, as the case may be. Now, does that mean that Zimbabwe does not have the capacity to diversify its economy and expand its revenue generation streams?
That's been a challenge, actually. Now they're trying to incentivize businesses, especially in the mining sector, to move up the value chain. For example, for lithium, they've actually introduced an export tax on the exportation of raw lithium. So they're trying to disincentivize miners from actually exporting raw commodities. But obviously, it's going to take a bit of time to enhance our overall processing capacity. So I think that's the challenge now. But we are hoping that probably in the next 5 or so years, we should have been able to enhance our processing capacity in terms of our critical minerals, namely platinum and also lithium.
All right, to wrap things up, Dr. Chitambara, now the repayment mechanism to Afreximbank involves allocating 35% of Zimplat export proceeds to actually repay the loan. Do you think that would have any sort of impact on the country's economy? We know that Zimbabwe is also trying to increase taxes on lithium, or levies on lithium, and of course there's also the wealth tax fund, and we know that the government is trying to also increase revenue in those areas. Now with that, and about 35% of Zimplat's exports or production of platinum, do you think that by the time we put all those together, it will not too deplete the purse of the Zimbabwean government?
Well, I think the new taxes that government has come up with obviously will help government in terms of their resource mobilization efforts. But again, that could also affect businesses in terms of their viability. But that's obviously an added cost for most businesses that were already struggling. Because most businesses have been lamenting the high tax burden even before the latest proposals by the Minister of Finance. So if these are implemented now, I think it's going to make it even more difficult for businesses to remain viable and sustainable.
All right, Dr. Prosper Chitambara, development economist, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.